Today's episode is part 1 of a Kaiju community redraw, where I'm showing off subscriber-submitted giant monsters, and I'm working 4 of them into the story over these 2 episodes. Previously, on Multiverse Tales, Alexis Jones gained the power of the Reaper on the day the Archon demons were granted physical form and started their rampage across the multiverse, tormenting and wiping out whole dimensions with their armies of demons. Alexis was hesitant to take on the responsibility of the Reaper, as she is adamantly opposed to killing, and the Reaper is the sole being in the multiverse who, if they kill an Archon, will also wipe out every demon that Archon has created since taking physical form. Luckily, she has since realized that the Archons do not go to hell when killed, they return to the non-physical realm from which they originally came, meaning she is fine killing them, or their demon generals and spawn. Her Reaper abilities have also been developing smoothly, as the rings that float over her head inform her of what she needs to do to increase her power levels and unlock new abilities, as shown in the episode Alexis is solo leveling. Thus far, one Archon, Suvastarif, has been slain, another, Fantarel, now called Toralai, has turned on her Archon family and joined forces with Alexis's team, the Sharp Gang, and another Archon, Cypheramov, has been killed but unfortunately had her abilities stolen and absorbed by the treacherous fiend, Tarsa. The Sharp Gang continues to hunt for the Archons while making new allies along the way to help them in their quest. If you're enjoying these stories, please consider hitting the like button to help with this video's exposure, and check out the end of the video for December 2024's community redraw prompt. Now, enjoy part 1 of the Powerhouses Reaper Rise. Alexis Jones burst out of bed like lightning. She had finally finished her mandatory 4 days off and would grudgingly admit, if asked, that she felt extremely re-energized. Plus, she had a new Reaper ability to try out. She hated taking time off while the team she co-led was fighting against the hordes of demons the Archons had made, but she also knew that if Sterling wasn't around to force her to take time off now and then, she'd work herself into the ground. 2 weeks ago, her team co-lead and closest friend, Sterling and Gilles, had pointed out that she was moving slower and making more mistakes in the field, despite her Reaper power levels steadily increasing. She said she was fine and tried to stay more focused, despite feeling out of it. A week later, Sterling was more insistent, stating that she should consider taking a few days off. Again, she resisted. Finally, a few days later, he essentially dragged her kicking and screaming out of the team's meeting room and told her 4 days off started immediately. That was how it went pretty much every time she needed time off. Her first day was awful, as she just wanted to get back to work. Her second day, she let herself finally relax, knowing if she didn't, Sterling would make her take even more time off. She slept in, then went to a dimension where she knew of a superpowered masseuse who could actually make her feel something through her naturally enhanced durability on top of her immense Reaper might. She then went for a hike in the forest around the Sharp Tank and let herself tune out from everything going on with the multiversal war against the Archons. Her third day was similar, but with more napping. On the fourth, she awoke to an unusual notice from her Reaper rings, which she half hoped was an emergency mission to get her back into work sooner. But it was actually something better. The red ring floated down in front of her eyes, and on it read, "New ability unlocked, Reaper Rise." It turns out that trusting a close friend's advice to take time off had actually triggered a new ability, and it was gonna be a good one. Seeing that new power available made her want to go straight off to test it out, but unlocking it was clear evidence that her Reaper abilities even approved of the break she was taking. She took her last day off, but as soon as day 5 came, she was more than ready to lead a big mission. One that only the Powerhouses were going on. The Powerhouses were those strong enough to take on a demon general single-handedly. In the Sharp Gang, there were now arguably 4 Powerhouses. The first was Heath Hurricance Reynolds. The second was Cosmara Noroi, and the third was Alexis herself, ever since getting her Reaper abilities. Now, Tayrun Jaanavar, the Beast Summoner, was going to be joining them as well, as he had made powerful enough creature allies on his latest adventures to be on a similar level to the gang's toughest. Finally, one other ally was going to join them. This one Alexis had never worked with before, but she was assured that he could hold his own in a fight as well as the Powerhouses, and that the team would need to get used to his presence. Since he was now the lead security personnel for the RAS Foundation, he'd be going on missions with the Sharp Gang plenty in the future. Alexis started her day with a 1-hour workout alongside Unkillable Kate, got updates from Sterling on what she missed on her days off, then went to have breakfast before the Powerhouse meeting and mission. In the kitchen, she was surprised to find her new ally had already arrived, and was chowing down himself.
By the gods, I've been alive for thousands of years and never had a sandwich this good. What did you call this thing, Doc?
Dr. Champagne McGregor was proudly leaning against the kitchen counter next to a sizzling panini press.
An apple chutney pulled pork panini. Probably one of me best concoctions.
It's so good. I'd love to see what you could do with Hydra meat, but just trying to cook with it could probably kill a mortal. Hydra meat is sort of a god's only kind of food, and even then, most of us can't stomach it.
It irked Alexis slightly hearing someone refer to themselves as a god, as she considered there to be only one true god, but she'd been around enough multiverse insanity in the last few years that things like that slid off her pretty quickly. In his dimension, Ares was considered to be the Greek god of war. She wouldn't let this alter her opinion of someone who seemed like he could be an incredible ally.
You think that Sammy is good, you should try his Monte Cristo panini. I cried the first time I had it.
Champagne's partner, Benny, boasted.
But hey, Champ, make sure we got some left over. We got Sam and Andy coming over for a bite too, remember? Yeah, don't worry, Benny, I got extra, despite how much of a big crunk lookalike can pack away.
Champ said, tossing another sandwich hot off the press into Ares' hand. He was about to take a bite big enough to devour half of it in one go when he saw Alexis had walked in. His eyes widened.
Well, would you look at that, the Reaper in the flesh.
He put a fist to his heart and bowed.
Never thought I'd meet the real thing. Been friends with some, spin-offs of yours for a good long time.
Respecting his customs, Alexis responded with the same bow. I've heard about your friends, but they were more accurately spin-offs of the original Reaper. I've only had the role for a few months.
Well, from what Prof. Dresden tells me, you're already tough enough to thump the last Reaper, so I'm excited to see what you got today.
Alexis still felt uneasy getting the compliment from Professor Dresden Oakland. She knew he was doing good work now, building the RAS, a foundation meant to contain and rehabilitate powerful villains to do good, but that didn't mean she fully trusted him yet, though she liked the path he was on. The foundation itself she fully approved of, as she was a big believer in helping people repent for their ill acts before they die so they wouldn't get the punishment she believed followed a life of evil, spending an eternity in hell. Besides, Alexis and Ares had plenty of mutual adversaries in the Archons and in Tarsa. Ares kept chatting with Champagne and Benny as he ate. Alexis made herself a quick but hearty meal, then she and Ares finished at the same time and were ready to head to the meeting.
Well, it was just swell to meet you fellas, and trust me, I'll be back for more of those sandwiches. If your friends aren't coming, I'd be happy to take the leftovers.
Yeah, I don't know what happened to Sam and Andy. Food's getting cold, but it's just one friend, so you can take one more half, I guess.
Alexis and Ares both looked at him confused.
What do you mean, one more friend? I thought you said...
Hey, did you miss me?
To Alexis and Ares' surprise and confusion, a large fish with human-like legs walked into the room.
You saved me a sandwich or what? Better not have fish in it, eh?
Hey, about time you got here, Andy.
Benny called over, grabbing the food for him. Ares leaned over to Alexis.
Is that, what am I looking at here?
She shrugged. I guess that's Salmon Andy. She turned around. Since Benny said it, I should have seen that coming. They both headed off to the meeting room. It felt overly large with only 5 of them in there, as the table could sit over 20, but they were all excited to be in the small group. The Powerhouses only paired up for the toughest of tough missions, and that was exactly what Alexis was ready for after her break. She stood at the front of the room with the others sat near her. Alright everyone, in case you haven't met yet, this is Ares, his world's Greek god of war from dimension M308. Tayrun was periodically staring at Ares, but upon the mention of Ares' home dimension, he gave an extra long stare. Tayrun had been wanting to visit M308, but it was locked for anyone other than a select few, like Ares, to go in and out of. Ares is here to help us apprehend a demon general of the Archon Kaijagrex. As Heath is well aware, this is the Archon who makes colossal monsters, usually ranging from 200 to 500 feet tall. His main tactic is to create these giant demons and have them fight each other in highly populated areas to create massive destruction and kill anybody in their way. Usually we'd just go for the kill on a demon general, but given Dresden has gotten far underway creating the RAS Foundation, we want to see if there's any possibility to rehabilitate an Archon Demon's general to go against the orders of an Archon. Even Dresden thinks this is pretty unlikely, but worst case it still provides an opportunity to test their new large-scale housing units for RAS patients. Ares is the RAS head of security and physical ability training. According to Dresden, he's got super strength that rivals Mara's, he can summon enchanted weapons, and he's basically immortal. He can be knocked unconscious, but can't be killed by anyone other than, well, me and beings called God Quellers from his world.
Right you are, Reaper, and just to make sure I got you all right.
He pointed to Heath.
Hurricane, you got some crazy super strength and speed, enough to take out a kaiju in one hit. But if you go too big that quick, you'll use up all your strength and pass out. Plus, lightning and weird weather stuff happens when you use your powers.
Heath nodded.
You got it. I've got a good handle on my power control these days, though. Haven't passed out in the field in a while now. But if I do need to land a really big hit, I'll let people know in advance to come grab my body if I do pass out and get me out of there.
Ares nodded, then pointed to Mara.
You can turn into a demon form that gives you tentacle thingies and a tail and a big punchy arm and stuff like that. In that form you've got super strength almost as strong as Hurricane's, but you don't have the same usage limits he does. And your speed is so fast it's practically teleportation.
Mara blushed a little. Well, I think that's a bit of a stretch as to how fast I can move, but basically, yeah. Ares pointed at Tayrun.
And you used to be an overseer, but you handed that power to an Archon demon. Thought that was a good idea for some reason, huh?
Tayrun's whole body tensed. Well, I know it was a risk, but Toralei really did prove that she—
I'm messing with you, Summoner. Prof talked me through the whole thing. I'd have done the same thing. I mean, probably not, but sounded reasonable enough. Anyway, you can summon some crazy monsters as tougher than any demon general we might come up against, right?
Tayrun's body relaxed slightly. Yes, that's right. For this mission, I'll likely call upon the dragons Gojiralith or Wellerman. It depends on whether Alexis feels we need more speed or power out there. I'll also be staying far back from the action myself, but can see and hear through my summons and speak to you all through our communications devices.
Got it. I also hear you're looking to come visit my universe. It's not exactly my call who gets in and out, but put on a good show for me and I'll see what I can do.
Tayrun's eyes lit up and he leaned forward eagerly. Of course, I will, thank you. Ares finally pointed to Alexis.
And our big tough leader here has all the powers of my buddies Mythil and Lorna, plus a bunch of rock and mineral manipulation stuff mixed in. So what, you got like flight, speed, strength, telekinesis, smoky weapon manifestation, immunity to poisons? Probably missing a few things, right?
Alexis nodded. That's most of it, but I actually got a new ability that we're gonna have to test out today. I think it's gonna help. Alexis explained the Reaper Rise, and the group all got even more excited for the mission. When that was complete, they all suited up and were off to Dimension K048. Kaijagrex had sent 2 demon generals to this world, and as far as the Sharp Gang could tell, had instructed them to fight over this world with their own kaiju demons, and destroy as many lives as possible in the process. The first general was referred to by locals as Colossal Cervidae. It was a moose-like kaiju that stood on hind legs and had a skeletal head and claws. It didn't have any fancy powers beyond creating other kaiju, but its strength was enough that the wind alone from its punch could knock over a skyscraper. The 2 demon generals had been going at it for a while when some of Dresden's scouts found this world. By this point they'd fought long enough that even Cervidae was stepping onto the battlefield with his soldiers. That made it easy enough to find him. The Powerhouses teleported into K048 a long way from the battle, but Benny had developed a way for their multiverse jumping wristwatches to teleport them to a specific location once they were in a given dimension. They teleported to the outskirts of the current kaiju battleground. Alexis was eager to test out her Reaper Rise ability, but that involved giving some of her strength away. Upon seeing the destroyed and panicking city Colossal Cervidae and his demons were ravaging as they brawled against the other general's monsters, she decided to stretch her legs a bit first. I'm going for Cervidae, Alexis said, hovering off the ground in a swirl of stones and purple smoke. I'll try not to kill him, but no promises. Worst case, we apprehend the second general after we draw it out. Remember, whichever general I don't kill will have to take out its demon soldiers one by one. Tayrun, I'll let you know if we need a different summon called in, but for now, start with whoever you think is best. He nodded and started to summon his dragon mount Wellerman as Alexis soared off into the city. She zipped through flames and smoke and destroyed buildings, growing more ready to fight with every terrified fleeing cry she heard from the civilians. She flew to the ground right near where Colossal Cervidae was tearing the head off one of his foes, making the rival kaiju burst to ash and float off in the wind. He noticed Alexis approaching and looked down on her with a thunderous laugh that sent shockwaves through the streets.
Would you look at this, lads? We've made enough of a ruckus to summon the wrath of the adorable baby Reaper. I was made to ravage whole worlds. Had you possessed the power of the Reaper for millennia, you would not be ready to face me, little one. Let alone having your title for mere seconds relative to the life of my master, Kaijagrex. You should fear me as you would a god. Even that is not praise enough. Bring your worst and still know it is nothing to me.
Alexis spoke into her earpiece. Bad news, Powerhouses. I accidentally killed the first demon general. Or, at least I'm about to. Alexis held out her hand behind her. She intended to form a longsword from her dark, smoky Reaper powers, but as she started that forming, she could feel that a new weapon was available. One she'd been working towards for a while. The red Reaper rings started floating down in front of her eyes, but she said, "I got it, rings. Guess Sterling was right about that break being good for me." A massive purple scythe formed as she looked up at the beast before her. He'd been rambling more about his strength, but she hadn't been paying attention.
Don't you dare ignore me, you minuscule hoser. I am the great and powerful.
"Stone Seekers!" Alexis yelled, interrupting the beast's rant. The ground around her shattered to pieces, and from it hovered dozens of jagged stone and concrete spikes. She thrust her free hand toward her foe, and all the rocks fired at it, aimed right for the demon's head. It swung its arms out in an X formation, and the wind knocked most of the stones off course, crashing into the surrounding buildings. A few struck it, but the demon acted as though it were unharmed.
If you thought that would work, you're just spare parts, aren't you, Reaper?
The stones had merely been a distraction as Alexis burst forward across the ground and slashed her scythe right through the kaiju's leg, slicing its foot off. It crashed to one knee, clutching a building to keep from falling over completely.
Yeah, you think one measly flesh wound will slow me down? I am a general of the great and friggin' heart!
Alexis soared past the beast again and sliced off one of its antlers. She caught the massive bone, spun around, and hurled it a few streets over. It smashed into the head of another kaiju, knocking it down. Alexis floated before her foe. "Reaper rings, how many slices will it take to kill the demon general Colossal Cervidae?" She read the response and sighed. "After a few days off, I was honestly hoping for something tougher." She shot through the air and sliced its waist, then its shoulder, then its back, then hovered in front of its head.
How are you so much mightier than I? Both their powers were granted by the Archons.
You serve a demon. I serve the Almighty Father. We're playing on very different levels. She shifted her hand down to the bottom of her scythe, raised it high, and sliced it right through the demon's skull. It exploded into ash. The first general was already slain. Through the comms, Ares asked,
You gonna leave any fun for the rest of us, Reaper, or you gonna take all of them out that fast?
Alexis smirked. That general was just being stupid and cocky. Stay vigilant. The other general likely saw that and will be a lot more careful now and not let me land hits so easily. This fight is far from over, but at least now this world's kaiju problem should be cut in half. Alexis looked out across the city and saw 3 more of the dozen or so kaiju turning to dust and drifting away in the breeze. She was surprised it was only 3. She assumed that half of the kaiju demons would have been creations of Cervidae. All his demons should have died when she killed him. Were the rest really working for the other general? Stranger still, across the city she could see that some of the kaiju were still brawling with each other. If all the ones remaining were made by the other general, why would they be fighting each other? Had it been ordered to have its own beasts fight amongst themselves if one general died? She wouldn't put it past Kaijagrex to give an order like that, but it still seemed strange. Alexis saw that Ares had leapt onto Wellerman's back and was wielding a massive axe on his way towards one of the colossal beasts. Mara was close on his tail, leaping across buildings. Heath was on his own, headed towards one of the burliest kaiju remaining, a hulking beetle-like demon with a long, sparking tail. Even from across the city, she heard him call,
Hurricane Hammer!
A dark cloud formed above the kaiju and rain started pouring down as a sparking fist struck the beast's chest. There was a thundering crunch as Heath hit the beast. The rain falling down scattered in every direction as a shockwave hit it, though the demon didn't seem harmed. As Heath fell behind some buildings out of Alexis's view, the beast swung its massive arm and clearly smacked something. She heard a figure crashing through buildings. When it stopped inside one last skyscraper, Heath called over.
Oh, wow. That one's got a good arm and a hard body. Might be one for you, Alexis. Unless you want to try that Reaper Rise move on me.
She grinned. Let's do it. She flew over as the kaiju was stomping towards the building Heath's body had landed in. He marched to the edge of a high floor of the skyscraper that was now lacking most of its walls. Alexis flew down in front of him. He slammed his fists together.
Let's go.
Her eyes glowed yellow as she said, Reaper Rise, Heath Hurricane Reynolds. Her red ring floated off her head and over Heath's. It started to glow, as did Heath's body. His eyes lit up yellow as well, and he hovered off the ground, with water droplets and hail forming and spinning around him. His supersuit warped to take on elements like the Reaper armor Alexis could form around herself. Heath raised his hand and clenched his fist. It sparked with yellow electricity, then shifted into ice, then into water, then back into its usual form. Alexis looked at him in awe and excitement. Well, how does it feel? He smiled widely.
Like I didn't know the meaning of the word powerhouse before now.
He soared out of the building with water and hail trailing behind him. Alexis saw that as he flew, the ground below him quaked, as if he was causing mini earthquakes as he moved. The sparking beetle kaiju raised its claw. It swung it towards Heath. He swung his own fist back at it. He cracked its armored palm open as water exploded around them like a swirling ring before falling towards the city below. The demon swung its tail around and struck him with the sparking limb. He flew back ever so slightly, but recovered quickly and held out a hand, pulling much of the electricity out of the tail into his own body. Like the Reaper rings themselves, a ring of electricity and a ring of water started swirling around Heath's head as he hovered higher above the beast. It looked up at him and hissed furiously.
I don't even know what it is I'm about to do exactly, but let's call it Reaper Repulsion.
He swung back a fist and soared down towards the beast. As he flew, the water and electric rings moved over his arm. The creature thrust both its arms towards him, but he tackled right through them and hammered his fist. As he struck, a shockwave emerged that formed into a sphere of black clouds around the creature. Alexis couldn't see it anymore, but she heard it shriek. Seconds later, hundreds of lightning bolts burst from the clouds inwards, illuminating the kaiju's silhouette as it cried out again. Then, its body burst into ash. The clouds and dust swirled together into a twister, then faded in a plume of black mist, leaving only Heath there, floating in the air. Through the comms again, Ares spoke.
So, not that I doubt my ability to take on these beasties with my own skills, but, you gonna let us all have a go at that, or what?
Alexis replied, The ring stated that I can only give the Reaper Rise as a temporary upgrade to anyone I wholeheartedly trust. That means most members of the team are good for it, but I don't think I've known you long enough to give it to you. Sorry, Ares. Maybe in the future.
Well, that's a bummer, but fair enough.
Heath hovered down onto the building top and added,
I also think I can't handle this anymore, Alexis. It feels incredible, but also like if I keep going any longer, my body's gonna fall apart.
Alexis responded, Got it. Reaper Eyes, deactivate. The ring vanished from Heath's head and came back to Alexis. His body and attire returned to normal. Alexis could feel her own strength returning to its full form. She was warned by the rings that while granting a Reaper Rise to an ally, her own abilities would be limited. She'd still be able to use her flight, speed, strength, and Reaper weaponry, but her enhanced mineral magnetism abilities would go offline. Still, it felt well worth it to give her allies a boost like what Heath had just showed off. Alexis spoke through her comms to Mara, who was now facing another kaiju across the city. You want to give it a go, Mara? Feels like I can do at least one more of those today. She anxiously replied, We might want to save it for later. This mission could be bigger than we thought. Alexis's excitement over the new ability was replaced with concern. What's wrong, Mara? I could be wrong, but it looks like this kaiju I'm fighting has one of Cypheramov's techno-organic enhancements, which means... Inadvertently, the energy around Alexis swelled enough that the top 5 floors of the building behind her shattered. She growled, Tarsa. Ares chuckled.
Oh, well, alright. I've always wanted to take a swing at the former Imperium Pantheon's head honcho myself.
Alexis hovered higher into the air, looking around for any sign of Tarsa. If she had used her stolen demon virus ability to infect some of Cervidae's demons, that would explain why some of them hadn't died when the general did. They now fell under Tarsa's command. Don't get overconfident, Ares. Tarsa has the powers of an Archon demon now. Even with all of us focusing our attention on her, we might not be able to beat her. If she is here, we should call in the rest of the Sharp Gang to help. I'm glad you understand a true threat when it arrives, Jones. A familiar voice with a mechanical twist to it stated from behind her. Alexis turned to see Tarsa, mechanically enhanced by the archonic powers she'd stolen, standing with 2 long mechanized tentacles, raising her from a building top to be higher in the air than Alexis. You know this won't be the first time I've killed a Reaper. Call in all the little mortal friends you wish. It will not change your fate. Before Alexis could speak, a chilling laugh rolled through the air.
Wow! What if she calls in some immortal help?
Alexis turned to see, soaring down from the clouds behind her, with wings she'd never seen on him before, the 70-foot-tall yellow Archon, Kaijagrex.
What say you, Reaper? We both want Tarsa slain, do we not? Is your pride too immense for a temporary truce?
Alexis looked from the Archon back to Tarsa. Between her thoughts, Mara spoke. Alexis, these kaiju enhanced by Tarsa's infection are seriously tough, and it looks like they're spreading the infection to the other kaiju. We might be in trouble here. Tarsa clearly needed to be stopped. But to defeat her, could Alexis really bring herself to fight alongside an Archon? That's all we've got for this tale today, but tune back in for the rest on Monday with 2 more community redraws and the ending of this story. Huge thank you to everyone who submitted for this, and specifically thank you to Angelisa and Dominic Lee, whose kaiju were redrawn in this episode. And if you would like to participate in the next community redraw, I will have the post put up on the PopCross Studios Patreon for free for everyone to see, but you can also see it here on screen now. I want you to submit your own original animal demon or dinosaur demon, and the submissions are going to be worked into a chapter for Fear of the Demon Hunters, one of my currently ongoing storylines. Final update here, Vigilance is finally officially releasing as a book on Monday. I am super excited that it's finally going to be out there. If you're watching this video on Monday or later, I'll have the link to Vigilance in the pinned comment or description or somewhere down below, but I'm going to be plastering that link everywhere. So I hope you're all excited to get it. Now besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today is a quote I read this week from a man named Corey Allen, who said, "My mindset is that every day I'm going to let go of old patterns that weigh me down and build new patterns that lift me up." I think that one's a good reminder to just try and think about what are some patterns that you do in your daily life that you know aren't helping you live the life you want to live. Take a moment to think about what those might be and how you could swap those out for some better patterns. If you slowly do that enough over time, you could dramatically change your life for the better, even if they seem like kinda small patterns that you're changing. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday.